Gonna be side by side as they approach the finish line. Here it comes.
A photo finish. One of the most exciting possible outcomes in all of racing. At the end of the day, fans want to see a good, close race. And what could possibly be closer than a photo finish? Marc Marquez has absolutely dominated the first two rounds of this season. So, I need to feel something again. I need to watch a real good close finish. I need to find the closest finish in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history. My name is B, this is the Beehive Paddock, and today we're looking at the closest races in MotoGP history. Well, let's start with the title of the video. No clickbait, no waiting. Closest MotoGP race ever was the 2006 Portuguese MotoGP Grand Prix. This was a potential championship deciding race between Valentino Rossi and Nicky Hayden. If Hayden won this race, he could have been world champion. Unfortunately for the American, this race being the closest MotoGP race in history would become an afterthought, as most people remember this race for Hayden's unfortunate accident with his own teammate, Dani Pedrosa. Rossi pulled away and looked set to win and take a commanding lead heading into the final round. However, one man on the grid had different plans, as Toni Elias had mounted a charge from 11th on the grid and was now in second place chasing down the defending world champions Camel Yamaha. With 7 laps to go, he would catch and pass the number 46, leaving the doctor in disbelief. Elias and Rossi would begin to fight, which allowed Rossi's teammate Colin Edwards and Kenny Roberts Jr. to catch up. Roberts, Rossi, and Elias would all swap the lead on the final lap. Finally, at the very end, around the final corner, it was Rossi from Elias from Roberts. Elias would pull out of the draft on the start-finish straight and would pull ahead of Rossi just feet before the finish line, winning the Portuguese Grand Prix by 2 milliseconds. If Rossi had won this race and all things had stayed the same in Valencia, Rossi would have won the World Championship on countback, a championship decided by 2,000ths of a second. Well, there you have it. That was the closest MotoGP race of all time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. What? What do you mean? There's more? There's more video? Oh, you see, while that was the closest MotoGP race of all time, MotoGP races actually only account for about 12% of all Grand Prix motorcycle races. So what about the other classes? Has there ever been a race closer than 2 milliseconds? Well, yes. And figuring out what the real closest race of all time is a little more complicated than you might think. See, throughout the history of Grand Prix motorcycle racing, there have been 8 times where 2 competitors have logged the exact same time in a race. That's right, there have been 8 ties in Grand Prix motorcycle racing, but not all of these ties are created equal. In fact, most of these ties probably weren't as close as the race that we just talked about. Timing technology has vastly improved over the 75+ year history of Grand Prix motorcycle racing. We have gone from humans holding stopwatches to time riders to advanced computer systems that can go down to the millisecond. And as such, the timing increments that we officially record race times with have changed as well. So of these 8 ties, 3 of them were only ties down to the 10th of a second. While that is still an incredibly close race, it's not nearly as close as 2000. These 3 ties were the 1952 250cc Nations Grand Prix, the 1959 250cc Nations Grand Prix, and the 1962 125cc Ulster Grand Prix. Another 3 of these races were exact ties down to the 100th of a second. One of these includes a Premier Class race. The 1975 Dutch TT saw Barry Sheene and Giacomo Agostini log the exact same time, finishing the race in 48 minutes and 1 second exactly. This could very well be the closest Premier Class race of all time, but unfortunately there's really no way to know. The other 200th of a second ties were the 1978 250cc Nations Grand Prix and the 1981 125cc Yugoslavian Grand Prix. That's 3 250cc Nations Grand Prix that ended in exact ties. I just put that together after reading the script. That's crazy. That's insane. The odds of that are so low. Finally, we come to the last 2 races. 2 official ties that happened in the modern era. These are ties that go down to the exact same millisecond. The first of these exact ties was the inaugural Grand Prix in Qatar, the 2004 125cc Qatar Grand Prix, and it would be between 2 riders who would both go on to become legends. Jorge Lorenzo, Andrea Dovizioso, and Alvaro Bautista would battle out front for the duration of the race. On the penultimate lap, Bautista would run way wide, his bike suffering under the heat of the desert sun. Yes, at some point someone thought it was a good idea to run a race in Qatar during the daytime. Regardless, the race carried on, and Lorenzo led Davi around the Lusail circuit one final time. Around the last corner, Dovizioso pulled out of the slipstream, and the two would cross the line at the exact same time. Just about 7 years later, and nearly 2,700 miles away, two different 125cc riders would find themselves in the same scenario at the 2011 German Grand Prix. And this really was just a classic lightweight brawl. A large lead group doing battle for most of the race, but with just a couple of laps left, the true contenders made themselves known. Hector Falbo, Johan Zarco, and Maverick Vinales would pull away, holding a tight group onto the last lap. Falbo held off Zarco in turn 12, but in the final corner, Zarco got more drive and would catch up, finishing in the textbook definition of a photo finish. So what do? We have two riders who just won a race. Do they both get maximum points? Sadly, no. While I would be all for giving both riders 25 points and credit for a win, sadly, that's not exactly how this works. There is a system for declaring an official winner, and that is whichever rider recorded the faster single lap time throughout the race. This means that according to the official record books, Lorenzo got the better of Dovizioso in the Doha duel, and Falbo beat out Zarco in the Sachsenring Spectacular. So those are the closest finishes in all of Grand Prix motorcycle racing history. But what if I want more than just the closest finish? What if I want the closest podium? Well, that 2006 Portuguese race was pretty close, being the closest MotoGP class podium ever, and the second closest Premier Class podium ever. But the official closest Premier Class podium happened a few years earlier, at Phillip Island in 1999. Kenny Roberts Jr. got off to an incredible start, and would build an over 6-second lead, before tire issues completely wrecked his advantage, and created a three-way battle between Max Biaggi, Tadayuki Okada, and Regis Laconi. Okada would take advantage of a door left open in a classic turn 10 move, and managed to fend off the others down the straight. The top three in this race were separated by just 0.124 seconds. That was pretty close, right? You would think. But what if I told you that the closest podium ever was over 12 times closer? 2014, Mugello, Moto3. Another lightweight classic. A 10-rider group was holding tight by the final lap, but a last lap crash would split the pack in two. Romano Fenati, Alex Rins, and Isaac Vinales would duke it out for the lead. In an amazing display almost like synchronized swimming, Rins and Fenati would pull out of the slipstream and take the finish line 3 wide, with Fenati sadly getting the win. Separated from third place by just 1/100th of a second. But I want more. My greed knows no bounds. I want every rider to finish close together. I want the true closest finish in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history. And for that, we don't have to go anywhere at all. We can stay in Mugello, but we have to fast forward 3 years. Mugello, 2017, Moto3. Look at it. It's beautiful. A long serpentine trail of machinery arcing across the Italian landscape, carving a path across the tarmac like a rolling basilisk. The racing almost too good to be true, an afterthought to the pure spectacle that is this Grand Prix. Andrea Migno would lead this group home to claim his very first Grand Prix win. And while the 37 thousandths of a second by which he bested Di Giannantonio seemed like an eternity compared to the other finishes we've discussed today, the top 15 in this race were separated by just 1.553 seconds, and the top 21 separated by just 3.476. Finally, the true closest race in Grand Prix history. I can rest happy now. Thank you very much for watching this video. I would like to thank my channel members. Let me slide over here. We have channel members MVP2112, Venturian CRO, Sean, and Moto Sapien. Anyway, that's all for today. A quick thank you for all the support on the last video. It was by far the most time I've put into a video on this channel, and all of the support that it got was absolutely incredible. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to be really cool. Join all those other channel members that I mentioned earlier. Don't forget to drink your Snapple, and have a fantastic day. Snapple, please sponsor me.